welcome everybody. It's a great pleasure to have you as part of the first webinar for the IPMA special interest group that focus in on project management officers, or the PMO SIG, as we call ourselves. So it's a very exciting event for me. I must say I'm also very pleased to have Henny Portman as our speaker today. Henny, thanks so much and welcome. We'll do some further introductions in a moment. And then, just again to welcome all of you to this session. I'm just going to kick us off with a few slides around the IPMA special interest groups. My name is Mark Kaywood. I'm the leader of the PMO SIG special interest group. Let me just click on my slide. There we go. The IPMA has a number of special interest groups across various sectors. You can see them there on the left. I'm sure there are many of those that are of interest to you. And if you're keen to be part of those and get more information from them and about their webinars and their various other activities in the area of interest and their industries, please go onto that sig.ipma.world and you can register your interest there. This is a webinar hosted by the Project Management Office Special Interest Group, and there you can see some of the key values that sort of hold us together as a collective of special interest groups in the IPMA. So what is the focus of the PMO SIG? Essentially, we're looking to support the growth of professionals working in PMOs through creating opportunities for networking and information sharing. We're a relatively new special interest group. As I mentioned, this is our first webinar. If you'd like to be a part of this and like to receive further information from us, either to join us at the core organizing team, you would also welcome to do that. Let me know, or just to be updated on future events and work that we're busy with. You're welcome to send me an email at pmo@ipma.world. Now, just briefly, and I'm actually based in Cape Town, South Africa. In fact, you can see my office in that photograph, and I'm very, very pleased to be part of the team that is organizing the 33rd IPMA World Congress. It's going to be a truly amazing event held here in our beautiful city of Cape Town. It's just over a year from now, so we're giving you lots of time to get your to book and be part of it. We have a website that is up and has a lot of information about the event. So please take a moment and visit our World Congress website. You can see it on the bottom left there, hope.capetown. And and if you have any questions, you're welcome also to get into contact with me. Okay, that's the end of the sort of background slides. I'm now going to move on quickly to introduce our guest speaker today, Henny Portman. Henny, when I was looking through your various work over many years, it's almost every point here needs to have an etc, because this is very much just a little taste of what Henny has done in over 40 years of working in the PMO project program portfolio management field. He was a thought leader in the NN group and was responsible for the application of PMO methodologies throughout Europe and Asia. Henny is a trainer, a coach, a consultant, an author, an international speaker, and a blogger. And for me, it's thus not surprising that he is now a finalist in the PMO Global Awards for the PMO Influencer of the Year in 2023. So Henny, congrats on that. I know the results will come out in December. We're certainly behind you. And if I had a vote, you would get my vote. 100%, but we'll leave it up for the judges. But clearly an indication of the incredible contribution you've made to our industry over so many years. And then Henny's just accredited across many of these different frameworks, P3O, PINS3, etc., and offers consulting services on all those different guides, etc. Henny's also written many books, and I know that his talk today is actually birthed out of one of the books that he wrote. Henny, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and allow you to share your screen. Thanks again. We're really looking forward to it. I know that your topic is one that is intriguing to me, having been introduced to the idea of agility and project management, but not in the world of portfolio management. And so really looking forward to this. A final few admin comments before I give over to you. Henny will present for I need to. So I'm just getting a message here about some admin thing. I'm not sure what I need to do. We'll present for about 30 to 40 minutes. We welcome you to please capture comments or questions in either the Q&A tab, which you should see, or in the chat. I will then collect those as we go along, and we will try to get to comments and address as many of those at the end of Henny's presentation. So without further ado, Henny, over to you, and thanks again.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Okay, I'm always saying I'm Henny Portman, that silly old guy from the Netherlands with a passion for project, program, portfolio management, PMOs, agile, non-agile, etc., etc. As Mark was saying, I have 40 years experience. I built PMO organizations in Asia and Europe. The hub and spoke models of P3O I implemented over there. 7 years ago, I created my own company with a couple of friends, and from there we do a lot of training, etc. My key focus at this moment is doing maturity assessments of organizations. Where are they standing from a project, program, and or portfolio management perspective? What can they do to improve their organization? I like to talk about the topic. I like to write about the topic. So I wrote a few books about this, and we are now going to talk about the book Agile Portfolio Management. So that's the key topic for today. And if we look at this book, Agile Portfolio Management, The Bridge to Strategic Agility, we are going to talk about what some people call Agile Portfolio Management. And just to make clear, and I will dive a little bit into what I mean with portfolio management, but what I see, what we have found, and this book I'm talking about, I wrote together with a professor of the Technical University in Delft here in the Netherlands. We visited many organizations, and we saw a sort of continuum of organizations who were focusing on more plan-based portfolio management. And we also found organizations who are really focusing on what we call discovery-based portfolio management. So if you look at Agile Portfolio Management, then many people think that Agile Portfolio Management is portfolio management of initiatives we are running in an agile way. And what we described in this book is it's not that part. No, we were looking at the agility of portfolio management itself. And during our investigation, during our site visits, we came to the conclusion that this continuum can be divided into 10 different measures. And these are the measures you can take as a portfolio management office, okay, to become more discovery-based instead of plan-based. I'm not saying, and I think that's an important message, that every organization has to move to a discovery-based portfolio management environment. I think there will be enough organizations. For example, I did a maturity assessment for an organization who was managing a electricity grid. They are making portfolio plans maybe for 30 or 40 years ahead. And then, of course, that's really plan-based portfolio management. You are not going to make every month or every quarter changes to a plan which has a horizon of 30 years. So I'm not saying one side is better than the other. What I'm saying is, when you look at organizations, when you look at how they are now performing portfolio management, maybe next year the world is different and they have to make some changes. So I am not describing in this book a standard process. This is how you have to perform portfolio management. No, I am showing you several areas where you can play. And those areas, we call that 10 measures to play with. And behind those 10 measures, you can find for every measure one control variable. So when I look at portfolio management, just to divide it, okay, there is something about the definition of your portfolio management and something about the delivery of your portfolio management. And if you look at the definition of your portfolio management, it all starts with what do you want to achieve as an organization? What are your organizational or strategic objectives? And that's already easy to say, but I see lots of organizations struggling. So for the organization, it's absolutely not clear what are their strategic objectives. And that immediately results, and we will come back on that, in projects in your portfolio which will not add any value to your organization. So it is already key to have strategic objectives. And then based on the objectives, okay, you can define a sort of strategy. How are we going to cope? How are we getting there? And to accommodate that strategy, you need to collect all kinds of information, all kinds of ideas, all kinds of initiatives. And then hopefully are there too many? It can happen. I did a maturity assessment for an organization, and their major problem was they didn't have enough initiatives to prioritize. So they couldn't fulfill or couldn't reach their strategy. So that was really a problem for them. But okay, let's assume you will have probably too many initiatives. So you need to prioritize. You need to set them in the right order. And then you can make a decision. Okay, are we more on a plan-based approach, or are we more on a discovery-based approach? If you are more on the plan-based approach, you will probably create a portfolio plan. In most organizations, it's on an annual basis, and then based on budgets and initiative allocations, you will push those projects in your plan, and then there will be temporary project teams who are going to bring those initiatives to an end, and the validation will take place at the end. Or if you move more discovery-based, then you see organizations who are looking at value streams, who are looking at roadmaps, and who are having an horizon of maybe a month, maybe a quarter. We will see all kinds of backlogs, and where the teams will pull initiatives from the backlogs. Those teams are not temporary teams, but are probably permanent or stable teams, and the validation will take as a continuous process takes place. So, and as an organization, you can play between these two. So based on the 10 control variables, and I will show them in a minute, you can play, okay, I will do a little bit more of plan-based in this situation, or here I will do a little bit more of discovery-based. That fits more for the moment we are in. So portfolio management, and I hope you are a little bit familiar with that, is about asking and answering 4 questions. Are we doing the right things? And so this is key. And so does the initiative contribute to the desired organizational objectives? And so this is about pet projects for the ego of a senior manager. You want to get rid of that. That absorbs scarce resources, but it will not add value to the organization. So this is a key question. Are we doing the right things? And then another question you as a PMO can ask yourself, are we doing things the right way? So this is about following a methodology. And when you look at plan-based portfolio management, probably it will be a standard. Maybe the PMBOK is used, or Prince2 is used, those sorts of things. How are we doing that? And are we doing that in a consistent way? If you are more discovery-based, then you will see that Agile will pop in, that we will do it on an incremental and iterative basis. And maybe we will make use of a scaling framework. Maybe disciplined Agile, maybe safe, maybe less, or something like that. When we are looking at plan-based portfolio management and we look at the third question, are we getting things wrong? This is about looking at progress reports, looking about what I call melon reporting. You probably know those status reports with those smileys. And then you see a smiley. Everything is running according to plan. So you see a nice green smiley. I always say, yeah, be careful. Maybe this green smiley is a melon. And if you open a melon, then it's red on the inside. So for the outside world, it looks like we are getting things done. But in reality, no, there are lots of issues. And that's what I call red. And so here we talk about all kinds of reviews, about aggregation on portfolio level. Where are we standing with all our projects? So here we focus on the status of the project? So probably looking at output. Or are we more on the discovery-based side, where we will not use the output, but we will look at the outcome, because we are not sure if we deliver the output, it will result in the right outcome, in the right value we are aiming for. So we have to monitor that. Probably you will make use here of an Obeya rule. And the final question is, are we realizing the desired value? So where are we standing? So in a plan-based portfolio management environment, you will see that is after delivery of the projects and programs. This is what we sometimes call benefits management. And probably many of you will understand or will see, maybe also in their own organization, benefits management is not really implemented that well in many organizations. And so that's difficult. Okay, we finished the project. So why not bothering then? Where are we standing? No, we already delivered the project. So let's assume it will bring us somewhere. No. And looking at discovery-based portfolio management, then it is a continuous process. Are we really delivering? And if we are not delivering the value, we have to react. We have to act. So these are four key questions you have to ask yourself and to answer yourself when you look at portfolio management. Okay, now looking at the 10 measures and control variables we found during our visits. And I will take time to look at each of them. So for example, cycle time horizon, the first one, that's about, okay, how long will I plan? How long? Where is my horizon? This is about, I would say, rhythm and cadence. So if you look at Agile, I think if Agile is doing anything to an organization, it's about establishing a cadence of iterations. So that means we replace the uncertainty of plans with the certainty of a rhythm. And that rhythm, that's exactly what we are going to do, also looking at portfolio management. Now, I will come back on this. And so we will look at work in progress. We will look at, okay, what's my orientation for the result? Is it output or is it outcome? Looking at my decision-making structure, is it hierarchical or is it a sort of network structure? What's the role of PMO there? Looking at decision factors. So are we data-driven or not, etc. And so all kinds of measures you can take to become more agile in the way how you are running portfolio management. So let's first have a look at the first one. And the book is divided in 10 chapters, so every chapter covers one of those measures. Now, as I said, the first one, this is about rhythm or cadence. So we use the cycle time or horizon as a control variable. And it can be very long, as I explained. For example, this electricity grid manager. Yeah, I have a throat problem, so maybe my voice will go a little bit up and down, but okay. And on the other side, so on the discovery-based side, we were looking at a very short period. I see now many organizations looking at a quarterly period, but I also found organizations who are doing it even faster. So we will see a rhythm in the organizations, and here I show a quarterly rhythm, where we see, okay, we will have a week, call it a quarterly business review or a big room planning, where we decide what are we going to do in the next quarter. And that what are we going to do in the next quarter, their senior management has to set the strategic objectives for the coming quarter. And maybe the underlying departments or product managers or product departments, etc., they have to look at, okay, what can we do to achieve those strategic objectives? And we will do that in a rhythm of maybe 4 sprints or time boxes or iterations of 3 weeks. Maybe another organization uses a different rhythm. I have seen in several organizations where the PMO creates a calendar. This is what we are going to do in the coming year. So all those moments are already there. So you can take that into account, maybe when you look at holidays, etc., etc. So for the organization, the rhythm is absolutely clear. Now, this is just a standard example. Probably some of you are familiar with SAFe. You see there more or less a similar part. SAFe uses 2 weeks in their innovation and planning iteration. Okay, I think for many organizations, they think that's too long. And it's also a little bit complex when you want to divide. So every quarter that makes more sense to do it in that way. But okay, SAFe follows the same streaming. What's also important when you talk about this, that you say, we want to be flexible. But suppose something is happening. So what are you then going to do? I say, okay, we already have, it's not waiting for a year. I see organizations who are really waiting for a year before they start to look at, okay, it's not working, we have to do something different. Now you already have this quarterly basis that you say, okay, on a quarterly basis, we can say, okay, this is what to achieve. So the next quarter, you can look backwards. Have we achieved what we promised from a value perspective? Have we achieved our strategic objectives? And if yes, okay, what are we going to do next? But also if no, okay, so what are we going to do different? And what are we now going to do to achieve at least the following objectives? So what is also important when you look here is that there is a sort of escalation mechanism. And also here, I would say, try to have short meetings, but have them often, instead of once every quarter, a very long meeting, and then you just have a few. And in this example, and this is a real life example of a financial organization, when there is a problem on the delivery layer, so on the teams, they can escalate and they receive feedback on the same day. I have also seen organizations, if they have to escalate to the next layer, so let's say to the department level or a value stream level, whatever you have in your organization, yeah, but the next meeting is next week. And if they cannot decide, they also have to escalate to the management team. But the meeting of the management team is again a week ahead. And then when they make the decision, it will be moved down to the department level. But that meeting, okay, is then the week after. So it will take at least 4 weeks before you make a decision. And this example is an organization where they do it at the same day. And that's for some organizations who really have to act fast. This really makes sense to have such a escalation environment. Another one is, how many initiatives are we running? I'm doing a lot of maturity assessment, and this is always a key problem. You can ask yourself, if you are a project manager, how many projects are you managing? And what I see in many organizations, that they are running too many projects. And if you are running too many projects, and let's you give me an example. At a certain moment, I became the regional PMO head for Central and Eastern Europe. And that CEO, that regional CEO came to me, Henny, I'm glad you're here. I'm not delivering my projects. So I need you to train my project managers. And I thought, yeah, maybe that's something I have to do, but I'm not sure. So I started to make an inventory of all the projects. And there were 10 business units involved in different countries. And I created a list of around 600 projects. And when I was interviewing those people in the different business units, I was also asking, just give me a rough figure. How many people do you need for those projects? And at the end, I had a list of 600 projects. And I went back to this CEO. I said, Tom, how many people are working in your region? Oh, around 5,000 to 6,000 people. I said, do you know how many projects you have in your region? And he had no clue. I said, now I have a figure, 600. And do you know how many people are needed for those 600 projects? Of course, he also had no clue. And I said, now it's around 3,500 people. And I said, but you also have an operation to run. So you don't have those 3,500 people to run your projects. So what was happening, that was firefighting. People were running 3, 4, 5 projects at the same moment. And if you are running 3 or 4 or 5 projects at the same moment, you are multitasking. And let's say that today you are working on one project and you face a problem. You cannot find a solution. It even kept you awake during the night, still thinking about, oh, how can I solve that? But tomorrow, you're going to work on a different project. What do you think? Can you switch your mind and say, I'm not thinking about that problem? Or are you still thinking about that problem? But you are working on a different project. So that costs a lot of time. But also switching means, okay, I have to look into that. Oh, what was this project all about? So also there I lose time. So multitasking will cost you a lot of time. I sometimes have big groups and then I show, okay, and then people say, but I can multitask. And then I make a very simple exercise. I say, write down the figures 1 to 26. And a second task is write down the alphabet, A, B, C, till Z. And then I say, I divide the group in two. I say, okay, one group will do it sequential. So they are not multitasking. Just first write down 1 to 26 and then 8 till Z. And I said, the second group, you are going to multitask. You are going to run those two tasks in parallel. And you write down 1A, 2B, 3C till 26Z. And I ask the people, when you're ready, raise your hand. And then the group who is doing it sequential all raise their hand and the other group is still working. And if you clock that, if you time that, then this group takes 50% more time. 50%. And these are two very simple tasks. And now you are running 2 projects or maybe 4 projects. So you can imagine you even lose more. So that means you have to look at what we call work in progress. How many projects can we run in parallel as an organization? So I'm not saying that you have to run one project. Of course, that's ridiculous. No, but you have to find out. And probably that is by experiment, by some trial and error. How many projects can we run in parallel before we start to reuse resources and they are jumping from one project to another? So that's key to find out. And if you know, okay, these are the number of projects we can run, then you have to think about the first question when we look at the 4 key questions of portfolio management. Are my projects contributing to my strategic objectives? And if that's the case, okay, then you say, okay, now I have a list of projects. So now I have to put them in the right order, or with other words, I have to prioritize them. Now in the book, we describe several prioritization mechanisms, for example, weighted shortest job first, but many more. So you have to prioritize. And that's what you have to do. And then you can deliver much more. So going back to my example, after a quarter, we reduced this portfolio of 600 projects. And we created a list of 150 projects. So we deleted a lot of projects without a business case, projects without a sponsor, projects not contributing to the strategic objectives and those sorts of things. So we had a very small list. And within 3 months, that CEO came back to me, Henny, what have you done? What a fantastic training you must have given to the project managers. I said, I didn't give any training. We only reduced the work in progress. But he said, yeah, but I now see that we are delivering projects. Yeah, this is because we now are focusing. So that's key. And this is a problem which I face in every organization I'm in. They are always running too many projects. So that's something, if there is one thing you can take from this as a PMO, start to collect data. How many projects do we have in our portfolio? How many projects are we finishing? How many projects are we adding in the next cycle? Start to get insights of that information. That will help you to show that you are probably running too many projects. Another one is managing by value. You can ask yourself, are we managing by value? And so this was the item in the past. We were looking at benefits management. Many organizations were not using benefits management. Or ask yourself, who has defined value? Maybe if you look at the Scrum Guide, for example, I think there are maybe 20 areas where they talk about value. But if you look for a definition of value, you will not find it. So you have for yourself to answer that question. So when we look at value, here we talk about result orientation. Are we output driven? Okay, so on the plan-based portfolio side, where we think the assumption is there. Okay, if we deliver this project, then we assume we will deliver the value. But that's not always true. And that's where we look at discovery-based portfolio management. That we say, okay, no, we must not focus on output. We must focus on outcome. So there is such an uncertainty in the output. So maybe we will not deliver the requested value. So the sooner we know, the better. And to understand that, we have to measure, okay, where are we standing? So we have to focus on the value. And if you look at value, in the book we describe several measures to make it more concrete. Understand that value is subjective. And so if I am going by train to a conference and there I give a presentation and I'm standing in front of the station and it's raining cats and ducks, and someone is selling umbrellas and maybe 20 euros or $20 for that umbrella. And I said, okay, I have to walk to that conference, 20 euros. Okay, otherwise I will become completely wet. So I will pay 20 euros for that umbrella. If the sun is shining and I see that person selling umbrellas for 20 euros, and forget about it. No value for me in that. So it's subjective. When you look at value, it's also not only talking about money. So define value holistically, multidimensionally, and talk about it in your project. And so have a look at product owners. Maybe you must call them value owners, because that's what they really are. We call them product owners, but at the end, it's about delivering value to the organization, delivering value to the customers. Now I will show you a small framework about value management. And so there are many ways to look at value. Now here you see a simple model. Then when you have a product and that product represents a certain value for you as an organization and for the customer, but maybe there is unrealized value in that product. Now that's interesting, because there you can find the areas where you can improve your product. And so that gives a lot of information. Okay, there is unrealized value. If there is no unrealized value, why then adding new functionality? And you see a lot of products and they are continuously adding new functionality, new features, etc. But if the customer is not waiting for that, then it's a waste of time and money. So it's really key to understand, okay, what is the unrealized value? Just as an example. Now, another one is about keep strategic options open. So this is about your strategy changeability. Do you have a fixed strategy or do you have a flexible strategy? And when you look at a strategy, I can almost give you the guarantee that it will not go according to that plan. Things will change. At this moment, we are what we call the VUCA world. So we talk about volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So if you want to cope with volatility, you need to have a vision. Where are we aiming for as an organization? And looking at uncertainty, you have to understand, okay, what's happening in the outside world? Or complexity. How can we clarify what is happening? So that can help me to understand that complexity. And ambiguity, if you want to cope with ambiguity, that asks for agility. So this is happening. So when you look at your strategy and you have a fixed strategy and something changes, okay, then it stops. So I think it's important that when you look at your strategy, it must have options, scenarios in it. So when something different is happening, you can make a different choice. So when you start to develop your strategy, maybe you are using a SWOT analysis or something like that, look at scenarios. Okay, what possible scenarios are there? What kind of options can I have to use within those scenarios? And an option which covers maybe multiple scenarios, of course, that's a good one to start with. So you have to think about your strategy, and you have to make sure that you can change halfway the road because something happens in the outside world. What I also found, okay, was what I call a strategic bets framework. And I think the nice thing on that strategic bets framework is that it brings back decisions to what they really are. They are opportunities with associated stakes. So when you want to make a decision, probably you are looking for information. Maybe you are missing some information. Maybe there are a lot of assumptions behind that. Maybe you will use some Fingerspitzengefühl, or maybe you are just bluffing as a product manager. So in the book, we say, okay, when you look here at those strategic bets, we say, okay, if you compare this with chess or with poker, we think it's more related to poker than it is to chess. And when I look, for example, at a company like Spotify, throughout their organization, they are making use of bet boards, where the people in the organization can also make their bets. Okay, this is the right thing we have to do, or not. Or if we look at SAFe, there you see on the product level, so not on the whole strategy, they are looking at the set-based approach. Keep your options open. And when you know what something more, okay, you can take out some options. And then finally you will get in the right direction. And so ask yourself, in the environment where we are in, can we use a fixed strategy? Or do we need flexibility? So it is also an important one to think about. Another one is about validation. When do you start with validation? Are you going to validate afterwards? Or are you continuously evaluating? So there's also a key point to think about. So the sooner you know, because there is so much uncertainty in your portfolio that you are moving in the wrong way, the better it is. So you could say, if we can do a small experiment and we find out that this is the wrong way to move forward, okay, let's stop. Otherwise, we are using scarce resources again, and that will not bring us our desired or our objectives. So in a more plan-based portfolio management environment, we will validate afterwards. And I would even say, then you are still experimenting. But these are really pricing experiments, high pricing experiments, because only at the end you just can say it works or it didn't. So the smaller your experiment, the better. And I will give you some examples in a few slides. So think about, when are we going to validate? Is that during my development or afterwards? Is that validation after each iteration. Or maybe some organizations are validating on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. Every time they check in and check out software, and they immediately perform some tests. Another one is, how is your decision-making structure organized? Is that hierarchical, or is that a more network structure involving more people? And so, as I said, uncertainty, that's key when we talk about portfolio management. And so also here, when we look at decision-making, so when we look at senior management, sitting around the table, let's call it the portfolio table, and they are making a lot of assumptions. Assumptions about the product they want to develop, assumptions about the available resources, assumptions about the needed resources, maybe assumptions about the underlying architecture. So lots of assumptions. And they make decisions without having the real knowledge. And that's so strange. This knowledge is there in the organization, but we are not making use of that. So when we look at our decision-making structure, maybe you can make use of business owners and product owners. So maybe you have a new initiative on the table, and there is some argument. There is a lot of uncertainty. And then a product owner can say, but in the next iteration, I can run a small experiment. And based on that outcome, we can decide, are we going to take this initiative in our portfolio or not? So I would say, when I look at a traditional portfolio management table supported by a traditional PMO, try to create a more hybrid decision-making structure. Call it a network involving business owners, product owners, where the real knowledge is. And the teams, of course. And support that with a value management office. And I think the key task of a value management office, so this is the evolution of your PMO, is to create a continuous stream of value-adding initiatives to the organization. And also to give them the mandate. If an initiative is not contributing, is not delivering enough value, you have to stop it as soon as possible. And that's also something scary. Yeah, but we are already working on this project for so long. No, if it doesn't add value, you have to stop it. And so if we make a comparison between plan-based and discovery-based portfolio management, so plan-based, that's more about sequential, waterfall, etc. Discovery-based, that's more about iterative and incremental, about agile ways, lean ways of delivery. Looking at plan-based portfolio of PMOs, they are supporting temporary projects, temporary teams. Discovery-based value management officers, they are not looking at those teams. They are focusing on this continuous delivery of value. And looking at the controls. On the plan-based portfolio management, you see there lots of teams who are collecting all kinds of highlight or progress reports, aggregating that information. Probably it's a very rigid approval process, stage gauges, etc., etc. When we look at discovery-based, it's all about this outcome-driven environment, focusing on the value we are delivering. Are we achieving our strategic goals or objectives? Maybe looking at dependencies. I will come back on that as well. And so you can see some differences. Looking at the processes, looking at the metrics, looking at the role, planning and control versus mentoring and coaching. So I think this is a very rich evolution. If you look at your PMO and you are focusing on planning and control, that's about being the police. No, you haven't filled in the right progress report at the right moment. No, it's about mentoring and coaching. That gives much more energy. And as a result, you are maximizing the value delivered. Data is key. I would say you are making all kinds of decisions. And when we look at a traditional way of working, there are probably, I call it again, a lot of assumptions. Maybe you're making your decisions based on beliefs or opinions. And I think you have to make your decisions based on real data. So probably you will set up an Obeya room where you can find all the data. So you can really make the decisions on data. I see organizations who are implementing objectives and key results. So as senior management, they are setting 3 or 4 objectives. And I would say preferably, if you have a management team, assign to each objective an individual management team member. And then here I just gave an example. So we have the objectives. So we can plan-based, looking at the activity side, or discovery-based. No, we are really focusing on the objectives. And to make a very simple example of objectives and key results. So our objectives is to increase the quality of life through education. How can we achieve that? So this is what we hope to change. Now, in this scheme, you see, okay, how can we achieve that? So at this moment, it becomes clear they are using a lot of time to fetch water. So how can we speed up that? Okay, and now we say, okay, if we have a village pump, we don't need to work for 2 hours. We can do it in 10 minutes. So that leaves a lot of time, which we can use for education. So we need to create this pump. So we are going to activity, digging and building this pump. And then we have the output. Okay, this is the pump. And now we start using that and we can measure. So activity, output, outcome, impact. And this is what I see organizations doing, thinking about this rhythm. Every quarter, they set 3 objectives for the coming quarter. And those senior managers are asking their teams, okay, what do you need to do to achieve that objective? And then they are building on a quarterly basis their plans. And this is what we are going to do. And at the end of the quarter, they can measure, did we achieve our objectives? So this is, when you look at data, to make it really explicit. Here are we standing. And so I'm not saying that you can get rid of your KPIs. I see KPIs, what I call as health metrics. Where are we standing with the organization? And OKRs, maybe you can use them within your OKRs to measure a specific point. But it's the combination which will show you as an organization, we are really moving towards our objectives.
Henny, just to quickly come in, you asked for a sort of 5-minute flag. So we've got a couple of questions and maybe 5 more minutes. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. I think this is the most important one I still want to discuss. So this is about execution flexibility. So are we using a fixed execution, so unchangeable implementation, or are we flexible? So think about a product. We are going to design a product. And then at the start, you can make use of a small experiment. Call it the MVP, the minimum viable product. Maybe some of you have heard about that. Eric Ries wrote a fantastic book about that. So there's a very small thing to test a hypothesis. And if the hypothesis is correct, you can move on. Maybe there are still a lot of assumptions, so you can even downscale it. And that's what I call the RATS, the riskiest assumption test. So I do a very small experiment. Based on that, I have the idea, it makes sense to develop this product. And then I start to develop the first commercial product. And that's what I call the MMP, the minimum marketable product, that contains just enough functionality that my customer, my client, is willing to pay for. So it's not completed yet, but it already helps this customer. And then I can continue in the discussion with my clients. Is there still unrealized value? Do you see room for additional functionality, for additional features? And if the answer is yes, I am adding. And at a certain moment, the client is saying, yeah, but you can add this feature, but I'm not willing to pay for that anymore. And then as an organization, you have to ask, okay, we have a mature product, so we will maintain it. Or maybe you say, it's not mature enough. I will get it off the market. So here you create execution flexibility. And then I will skip the one about growth delivery capabilities. So This is portfolio management, but also the teams you are using to deliver your initiatives. If you can increase that delivery capability, you can deliver more in your portfolio. So think about that. So I'm not going to discuss that for the moment. Or the last one, continuously improve portfolio management. So as I said, portfolio management, the way you are doing it, next year, it will probably be different. So you have to continuously look for where is room for improvement. So make use of retrospectives. Do it in line with the heartbeat of your organization. And do it step by step. Very small changes at the same moment. And then you can say, okay, as an organization, where am I standing at this moment? And where do I want to be? And that gives you room to set up the changes you have to make as an organization. So at the end, you can deliver more. And sometimes you have to move a little bit to plan-based portfolio management. And I think more often you will move more to discovery-based portfolio management. And I think this is just a very brief introduction of the book Agile Portfolio Management. So if you're happy, if you think, no, sounds interesting, I would say you can find it here. Okay, Mark, up to you. Questions?
Wonderful. Henny, thanks so much. So much to think about. I know I've got a bunch of questions in my head. And there have been some questions in the Q&A, so I think I'll reference those. I know from my context, it certainly sits a lot in the plan-based approach. I can relate to most of the theory in that space. Although I must admit that on the discovery side, as we've moved forward and I believe matured as a PMO, more and more you start to find yourself thinking in the discovery way. Whether it's this, you spoke about planning, control versus coaching and mentoring. More and more you start to see you need to support, you need to come alongside. You can't just control the whole questions around single focus versus PM project managers having to do multiple projects. That's concerns we're having to grapple with. Value creation, how do we measure value as opposed to just delivering the output? So a lot of food for thought on my side, for sure. I'm going to jump to a couple of the questions. Tika, thanks for your questions. If you don't mind, I'm going to go on to your second question. Tika says, speaking of value, lots of valuable takeaways from this session. Henny, in your experience of working with leaders across many countries, as agility is also a mindset, could you share of any cases where you've found that leaders struggle to understand agility at this portfolio level and struggle to basically adopt this discovery-based mindset in order to really create value from this approach? So I guess it's talking to the challenge of actually starting to adopt some of these new ways of managing.
At a certain moment, I was in Dalian, that's China, and I was there already 1.5 weeks, and at a certain moment, the CEO came to me with a talk, a translator, and he said, Henny, I hear some fantastic stories. And I want you to know one thing. And he looked at me, and he took his finger, he said, there's only one in this organization who's going to make the decisions, and that's me. And so talking about culture, so I think senior management is key in an organization. And I have seen here in the Netherlands, I'm based in the Netherlands, where an organization was struggling to make a shift towards a more agile way of working. And it didn't work. They tried it several times and it didn't work. And at a certain moment, they replaced the CIO, the Chief Information Officer. And that person was a very traditional guy. And they hired someone who was already doing this work for many years and making several agile transitions in other organizations. And the moment on board level, we had someone in the room who was really adopting this agile mindset, this agile way of working, he started to influence his colleagues. And that was a key enabler for making this step. Thus, if you are working in an organization and you have a very traditional management team, it will be very difficult. And this is what I see all over the world. And sometimes I'm lucky I'm in the Netherlands. So here we don't have really those hierarchical structures. So that makes life a little bit easier because when we say agile mindset, this is about trust of people. This is about, I trust my people, so I trust them so they can make their own decisions. No, I don't trust them. So everything needs to be escalated.
Yeah.
And I see many organizations where this hierarchy is very strong. And then it becomes really to get that single person at the top who really already adopted this agile mindset. And that's a starting point. So you saw it many years ago already when you start to implement a project management methodology. They say, okay, or looking at the success of a project, we need to have management buy-in. Now, I think if you want to change your whole organization, then absolutely there you have to start. Yeah.
Thanks, Sini. Yeah, that certainly makes good sense. And I have another question here from Alfredo from Ecuador. He says, greetings from Ecuador. Such a great presentation. What do you think about companies who combine the plan-based and the agile-based approaches at the same time? Do you consider the hybrid mindset is the new reality?
Now, if you look at this model from the agility from portfolio management, looking at those 10 sliders, there you have to look at now here for this. Okay, I will have a planning horizon a little bit more to the left to plan-based portfolio management. But looking at how I am coping with multitasking, no, I am focusing on a very small portfolio. So we are much more discovery-based. And so here, my portfolio management presentation here is talking about hybrid portfolio management. A little bit from this, a little bit from that. If I look at organizations, and probably that's more related to the question, looking at the hybrid thinking. So looking at your initiatives, you have to find what is the most suitable way of working for this initiative. If I start to develop maybe a banking app, and I want to make use of a more plan-based approach. So that means upfront requirements gathering and all those sorts of things. Okay, getting a lot of signatures. This is what we have to build, etc., etc. And then we finally build it with, let's say, 250 functionalities. At the end, I have built that app with those 250 functions. Probably it took a long time, and my customers are not that happy. So for those kinds of initiatives, I would say, use a more agile approach. So there I say, I start with a minimum marketable product, just a few features. And I start to have the debate with my customers. I get feedback. Okay, now I see this. I want to have that. Now I see that. I want to have that. So maybe my list of 250 at the end, I have a very happy customer with only 150 requirements or features. And if I compare those 150 with the 250 of that traditional approach, maybe there are only 100 which are in that list. So 50 I did not thought about, but based on my agile approach with iterations and increments, delivery, getting feedback from my customer, I created 50 new features. And now I really have a happy customer. But if I'm going to build a back office system to replace an existing back office system, probably I need to have much more planning up front. If I'm going to look at air control, and we say, okay, we will build some functionality, we will have a lot of feedback loops, so we will get immediately feedback when we do something wrong, etc. So we can make small changes, etc. And we get the feedback. Yeah, I hope they did a lot of testing up front when we look at air control. So there, I would like to have a more plan-based approach. And so I think that's the question is absolutely right. We are moving towards a hybrid model. And I'm saying, okay, you have to look at your initiative and which model, which approach will fit. So looking at fit for purpose, but now from a methodology perspective, okay, here we need an agile approach, here we need a more traditional approach, and maybe here we will have a large project where we will have teams who are using an agile approach, and we will have teams who deliver sub-products who will using a more plant-based approach. So absolutely agree that we are moving towards that direction. And there is, I'm sometimes saying, and that's a different book for my, okay, looking at all those agile frameworks, at a certain moment, I had 100 different agile frameworks. Agile is not the silver bullet for all my solutions. No. So they were adding more and more and more agile frameworks. And that's when you look at the internet, search for the bird's eye view on the agile forest. And there you will find lots of articles I wrote about this, where I compare all those different agile frameworks. And I talked about the evolution of those agile frameworks. So forget about it. Agile is not the silver bullet. And when I look at the standards group, they do searches. They have hundreds of thousands of data points about the success of projects. Every 2 years, they create their chaos report, fantastic title, with the top 10 of issues, which are the failure factors or success factors. Now they compare also, we did it in an agile way, or we did it in a more traditional way. We still see that between 30 and 50% is not delivering the value. And it doesn't matter if we are using agile or if we are using traditional. So we need to look at both worlds.
Great, thanks, Annie. I know we've hit 2:00 at least South African time, just gone up 2:00. So there are more questions, and I know, Henny, you were kind enough to agree to carry on a little bit past the time. So we will continue the conversation and address all the questions. But for those that need to leave now too, thank you very much for joining our webinar. You will receive a IPMA survey, which we'd really appreciate if you take some time to give us your feedback. You also receive an IPMA badge for attendance. And then we'd also appreciate some feedback specifically from our PMO SIG. I'm going to put the link in the Q&A, so please take the time just to I don't know quite how I'm going to do that, or maybe let me just share my screen quick, if that's okay.
Shall I stop sharing?
Yeah, thanks, Annie. I think if you can just, hopefully you can all see that now. If you can, please just give us your feedback. There's a code, a QR code, or follow that link. We'd really appreciate it. Yeah, and Henny, just in front of everyone, thank you so much for a very fascinating and such a broad. Yeah, I mean, you covered so much there, so much to think about. But if you're happy, maybe we can just address a few more questions, Henny, and then we can bring this to a final close. So we have from Louis. His question is, and this is a pretty broad question, but I'll put it to you. How do we move? What is the way to move from a traditional approach to a more agile approach in portfolio management? Or I guess the question is where would you start to make this transition to introduce a more agile portfolio approach if you were leading a PMO or in a company? What would be your first steps to make that?
So, yeah, I understand the question. So I described 10 areas where you can make improvements. So I think the first thing you have to do as an organization is looking, where do I have my biggest problems? So I would probably say, if I am coming to an organization, my first questions will be about how many projects are we running? I think it was Antonio Rodriguez who wrote those books for the Harvard Business Review. And he said, okay, if you want to do something in an organization, want to improve an organization, start with dividing your project portfolio by 50%. So divide it in halves. That already brings a lot of benefits. So looking at this book, looking at those 10 areas, don't start with all at the same moment. And so in chapter 10, I describe about, okay, continuous improvement of portfolio management. So that's exactly what this question is all about. Here I am saying, do it step by step and take very small steps. And for example, if you look at the Tour de France, and there was a manager, and he said, okay, my ultimate goal is to have, and let's say within 5 years, a British guy winning the Tour de France. And he discussed this with his whole team. And they started to implement very small changes. And they were looking at the mechanisms, the mechanicians, looking at the food, looking at the all kind of other people around this team, the masseurs, everyone. And they were all making very small changes. And he didn't manage to have in 5 years, or after 5 years, someone, a Brit, who won the Tour de France. No, it took him 3 years. And then Brad Wiggins won the Tour de France. So by adding every time a very small step, if you improve every day an area by 1%, after 365 days, it's already more than 40%. So it's all a very small step. So what you have to do, looking on your retrospectives, where do we see the biggest problems in our organization? And then I would say, start with your portfolio. How many projects are there? And if you reduce that one, okay, then you can look at, okay, how can we make sure we are not developing a project till the end? So how can we make sure we can validate faster? So doing more and more experiments to find out, no, this is the wrong way we have to go. As I said, there's this instrument of Eric Ries, this minimum variable product. You can use that on many places. Just to give an example, I would like to introduce a new product on the market. I can develop this whole product, and then maybe after a fantastic product launch, nobody is buying this product. Maybe a small experiment, an MVP was, okay, maybe on my portal, I just put a question. Are you interested in this new commercial product? We are in the middle of developing it. If you are interested, leave your mail address behind. If nobody leaves the mail address, don't develop it. So this is just 1 or 2 hours of work, and you can find out, instead of developing the whole product as we did many times in the past. And so don't take all the 10 at the same moment. Choose one.
Thanks, Henny. I'm going to combine 2 questions, and then we'll have one final question, so we can bring it to a close. The one question is around maturity assessments. How have you, or can you use maturity assessments to improve portfolio management agility? And then there's another question which also links. Could you share information of which method you use for agile, lean portfolio management maturity assessments? So there's this question around the use of maturity assessments with this agile approach.
Yeah, so when you look at maturity assessments, I am familiar with, for example, OPM3 from PMI or P3M3. This is about, when you talk about maturity, it's about, at the start, about standardization. So you have a method in an organization, and are you using this method? And so there I start to make the comparison. Okay, you say you have a method. Are you using the method? So if you say, I have a way of working when we look at portfolio management, okay, show me your standards about portfolio management. And then I'm looking at, how are you using your standards? So there could be a discrepancy between them. Okay, so that's my starting point. Then I will have interviews with senior management. Okay, when we focus on portfolio management, okay, what do you want to achieve as an organization? Are we achieving that as an organization? So what are you facing? And there I am trying to find out, okay, what are the issues the organization is facing? So maybe it was just about, okay, we are not delivering our projects. Okay, or maybe it is about we don't have our objectives clear, so we don't know what are the right projects to choose. So there I get an understanding. When I look at agile portfolio management, And now I have those 10 sliders, those 10 areas. I now use, when I focus on agile portfolio management or more discovery-based portfolio management, I see an organization struggling and they want to become more agile, to become more flexible. So then I can now use those 10 sliders and just to measure, where are you standing? And where do you want to be? So I have my as is and my to be situation. And then I start to have workshops. Okay, you are saying, looking at the strategy, you want to have a strategy which is more flexible. Okay, so now have a look at your strategy, maybe organizing a workshop. So this is really a fixed strategy. What can we do in this strategy so it becomes not a fixed strategy anymore? So there we start to talk about bets, we start to talk about scenarios, we start to talk about options. Okay, so if we have those 3 options and this is happening in the outside world, we can choose for that one. Or if that is happening in the outside world, we can choose for that one. Yeah. And so I can now use those 10 sliders as an add-on on my standard approach of maturity assessment when an organization wants to become more agile in their portfolio management.
Thanks, Henny.
Yeah, so you can.
No, sorry to interrupt you. Sorry, then the last question is, first of all, it says, thank you for this webinar. Henny, you're great. Would it make sense to design a decision tree with criteria that would help you decide which approach is better? The person, Angeliki, mentions waterfall agile hybrid. So I guess it's trying to say, help people, as you, like you said, look at where things are going wrong and then see that might be an opportunity for agile. But yeah, just a decision tree that would help guide your way forward.
Yeah. So when you look at that, so that's about, okay, are we going to use a hybrid way of working? Are we using a more traditional way of working, more a agile way of working? Yeah, probably here you have to look at the environment where you are in. But I think for the PMO, it makes sense. So when you now look at PMOs more on the plan-based portfolio management, I have seen many PMOs who create a sort of decision table. Are we talking about a simple project, a medium project, a more complex project? And that already drives, okay, if we talk about a really complex project, we really need to have senior project managers. We have to look at the governance structure around that. That you say, okay, in my organization as a PMO, we are looking at our projects and we say, okay, we have run this project in a more traditional way. We are now moving towards an agile way of working. This is also about experimentation. So I have to look, okay, what is happening? Now we have done it in an agile way. And as I said, agile is not a silver bullet. So we will have examples in our organization where we say we did it the agile way, but in the end, it wasn't successful. So you have to build up, you have to start to create the decision tree within your organization. And I think this is a fantastic thing to think about as a PMO in your organization. How can we support our organization? So we are not saying, we are not pushing, and this is now the way forward. No, so we all have read a lot about Agile, so now we have to move towards this direction. No, look at your own data. So start with your own data and to find out, okay, here it works, here it doesn't work. And so this decision tree will be unique for your organization. And I think it's really a good instrument if you build that one.
Good. Henny, thank you again. I see we have a final comment from Sam, the forest man, our friend from Finland. And he says, well done, you've definitely earned one lonkero. So those who don't know, a lonkero is a delicious Finnish gin and tonic. Sam, the only question is, I think I might have earned a lonkero as well. I didn't have much to do.
I am looking to the postman when he delivers one.
Me too. So I have to give a bit further. But Henny, thanks again. Thanks everyone for your for joining us on this webinar. Please give us your feedback on those various feedback options. Please get in touch with us on that through our website. I mean, through our email if you would like to get more information about our special interest group. And yeah, that brings us to an end. So have a great rest of your afternoon, and we hope we see you again soon. Thank you. Thanks, Henny.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.